Okay. So can you guys see my screen now?
Nakikita, Doc. Nakikita. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Doc, can I just turn off my camera? Medyo nag-flicker kasi yung internet ko.
Okay lang, Doc. Okay lang.
Okay, I'll just turn on later kung medyo mas stable tayo. May bagyo kasi dito sa Bacolod. So, kaya parang nag-aano kami. Okay. So for everyone's idea or for everyone's information, so I am Dr. Juniel Aliman. So I am a graduate of Central Mindanao University in the year 2018. So I also passed the boards in the same year. So and then after that in the year 2020, so I took up medicine. Just graduated last July 2024 and currently having my postgraduate internship at Riverside Medical Center, Bacolod. So I'm learning Hiligaynon language now. So iba't iba na yung language na alam ko ngayon. So welcome to your comprehensive review on veterinary pathology. I believe this is your first session for veterinary pathology. So for this morning, we will be talking about general concepts on veterinary pathology. So first topic is about adaptation, injury, and death. So this is a 1 hour lecture, so we'll have to touch general principles, but we'll try to dig in deeper on the most important, the high-yield topics based on what is mostly and then frequently occurring in the board exam. So pathology, I believe, is the most one of the most challenging subjects in the board exam. Not the most difficult, most challenging only. Kasi nasasagutan mo naman siya once you know the basic concepts and understand um, the processes, the pathologic processes of diseases. So adaptation, injury, and death. So according to Thompson, there are 4 aspects of a disease. So etiology, you all know what's etiology, that's the cause. And there are two classes of causes or 2 classes of etiology. So your genetic and then acquired cause. So, but most of the diseases, they are multifactorial. So some patients are already predisposed genetically to develop a specific disease. But because their environment permits them to develop the disease, so nagkakaroon sila ng expression of the disease. So most of the diseases are multifactorial, but your etiology are classified into 2, genetic and acquired. And then you have your pathogenesis, that's the second aspect of a disease. So it involves all the biochemical and molecular mechanisms of the development of the disease. So when you say pathogenesis, the sequence of cellular, biochemical, and molecular events that lead to the development of disease. That's pathogenesis. And in addition to that, you have your morphologic changes. So both gross and microscopic. So if there is a significant damage to the organism, there's already your morphologic changes, mga structural alterations in the cells, if we are talking about microscopic, and also structural alterations in the organs that you will be able to see grossly on your necropsy exams or your biopsy. And then when there is morphologic changes, so you will expect changes in the function of the organs or the cell at the microscopic level, leading to the expression of clinical manifestations, mga functional consequences of your morphologic changes. So this is a diagram. This is a diagram of how the cellular responses to stress and injury stimuli. So a normal cell, the normal cell is able to handle physiologic demands by maintaining a steady state. We call that a homeostasis. Okay, so when this homeostasis is disturbed by a stress or an injury stimuli, the body will go into cell injury. Okay, there's a specific cell injury, or the cell may adapt to these injurious stimuli or to this stress. So, what are these adaptations? We will talk about it later. Either the cell will grow in size, will multiply in number, will shrink, or will change into another cell type. So, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, atrophy, and metaplasia. Or if the cell is unable to adapt, so they will undergo the cell injury phase. Okay, so this cell injury, it may be reversible or irreversible. Okay, if it's a mild transient lang na stressor or injury to the cell may be able to recover So that's what you call reversible injury, or the cell just undergo mga degenerative changes. But if the cell injury, if your reversible injury is ano na siya, irreversible, so there are two pathways that the cell will undergo. So it will undergo either necrosis or apoptosis. So we'll talk about the difference between the two later. So let's proceed to reversible injury. So in your reversible injury, the affected cell basically is characterized by degenerative changes. So what are these degenerative changes? Either intracellular or extracellular accumulation, intracellular and extracellular pigmentation, and pathological mineralization, specifically calcification. So the first intracellular or extracellular accumulation that we will be talking is your cellular swelling. So this is actually in the early chapters of your Thomson, you will be able to read your cellular swelling. So which is also known as your hydropic degeneration, cloudy swelling, and vascular degeneration. So what usually happens in your cellular swelling? So in a normal cell, so if you review your physiology, there is an active sodium-potassium ATPase pump. Okay, this sodium-potassium ATPase pump maintains proper concentrations of these ions both on the inside and outside of the cell. So remember your PSO, potassium in and sodium out. So pag may lalabas na tatlong ions ng sodium, may papasok na dalawang ions ng potassium. So these pump is very essential for the maintenance of mga proper concentrations and also the osmolarity of the cell. Okay, but when it happens that there is a stressor or a stimuli, injurious stimuli, say for example ischemia or deprivation of blood flow, leading to hypoxia or anoxia, the mitochondria fails to produce your adenosine triphosphate. So we all know that these adenosine triphosphate engines your sodium-potassium pump. So what will happen? As a result, excess sodium stays within the intracellular compartment. And remember, where sodium is, water follows. So ultimately leading to cellular swelling or intracellular accumulation of fluid. So nangyayari sa cell, nagsiswell siya. Okay, so that's failure of your sodium-potassium ATPase pump. What about your fatty change? Okay, another intracellular accumulation, which is classically called as your fatty degeneration, fatty infiltration, fatty metamorphosis, and steatosis. So I want you guys to remember the synonyms. So yung hydropic degeneration sa cell swelling, and then itong mga fatty degeneration sa fatty change. Kasi most of the time, the board examiners will give you a different name, so do not be confused. So you have to be familiar with the synonyms, kung ano yung mga other names niya, ano yung other terminologies that is used to refer that specific condition. Okay? So your fatty change, it occurs in organs that are actively involved in lipid metabolism. So what are these organs? You have your liver, okay? The hepatocytes. You have your heart, your cardiac muscles, and of course your kidneys, your kidney tubular epithelium. The primary organ that is affected by fatty change is the liver, okay? It's the principal organ affected by this fatty change, as it is actually a result of imbalance between the availability of intrahepatic triglycerides and their secretion as lipoproteins. So this leads to the rapid accumulation of your triglyceride-filled lipid vacuoles, which is now a characteristic of your fatty liver. Okay? So pag may ganito na kayong patient na nagpa-fatty liver, bigyan na kayo ng Essentially Forte. So that's how you appreciate lang the fatty change. The principal organ is your liver. Okay? Hyaline change. What do you mean by hyaline change? So while the cells contain a variety of proteins intracellularly, so there are few circumstances wherein there is unusual amount of protein that can be present and histologically recognizable as droplets or protein bodies. This is now your hyaline change, which typically occurs in the kidney tubular epithelia, appearing as minute round particles in the cytoplasm. They can also be extracellular when they are seen in damaged blood vessel, and they represent leaks of plasma proteins wherein Microscopically, your hyaline change would appear as homogeneous, glassy, and eosinophilic. This is very high-yield glass. Remember your hyaline change, homogeneous, it's glassy and eosinophilic. If you see this keywords in the board exam, remember your hyaline change. Okay, homogeneous, glassy, and eosinophilic. Amyloidosis, it's another intracellular accumulation. So amyloidosis, your amyloid is derived from your monoclonal immunoglobulin light chains, usually of lambda type, produced by abnormal clones of immunoglobulin secreting plasma cells or B cells. Okay, so it may be primary or it may be secondary to conditions like multiple myeloma, some other mga monoclonal gammopathies like immunocyte dyscrasia. So they usually accumulates in the basement membranes of the kidneys, liver, and pancreas, and then its appearance is homogeneous, pink, smudgy. Okay, homogeneous, pink, smudgy, proteinaceous material seen on hematoxylin and eosine stained sections. So if your hyaline change is homogeneous, glassy, and eosinophilic, so your amyloidosis is homogeneous, pink, smudgy. Okay, you remember this one. Next is your glycogen. So glycogen degeneration is obviously accumulation of glycogen in unusual amounts. So glycogen, it's a form of carbohydrates, right? It's the storage form of glucose. And they are normally found in cells, especially your liver cells. Kasi yung liver cells, sila yung nag-store ng glycogen. But merong mga disease conditions or disease processes that cause this glycogen to accumulate in excessive amounts. Okay? So one example is your diabetes mellitus, particularly your diabetes mellitus type 2, wherein your body does not normally respond to insulin. There is the pancreatic islets of Langerhans are able to produce your insulin, but there is what you call insulin resistance, wherein there is insulin, but the body does not respond to it. That is the mechanism of your diabetes mellitus type 2. So they do not normally respond to insulin. So as a result, excess glucose stays in the bloodstream, further preventing the breakdown of excess glycogen in storage cells. So iniisip kasi ng katawan na, ba't ko bibiyakin yung glycogen? Ba't ko bibiyakin yung glycogen? Marami naman akong glucose sa bloodstream. Because the body does not respond to insulin, which is the primary hormone responsible for mobilization of insulin for storage. So ang nangyayari, glycogen accumulates in excess in hepatocytes, and then some other in skeletal muscle cells. So, nagkakaroon ng glycogen degeneration. Also, this also occurs, itong condition na to, this also occurs in patients with Cushing syndrome or hypercortisolism. Okay? Primary organ involved is your liver and also your skeletal muscles. Okay. Another one is your mucoid degeneration, which is the accumulation of mucopolysaccharide in cells. So they are seen in endocardiosis. So endocardiosis, it's a degenerative condition of the heart valves. And also in hypothyroidism, wherein the skin, particularly the skin of the face, becomes wrinkled, creating a tragic appearance. Tinatawag siyang tragic appearance because parang kalunos-lunos yung expression mo palagi is parang nalulungkot ka. It's tragic appearance because of skin wrinkling. Okay? So, typically, they accumulate in the extracellular spaces. So, nagkakaroon tayo ng mucoid degeneration. So, let's proceed to intracellular and extracellular pigmentation naman. Okay? So pag sinabing pigmentation, it can be exogenous or endogenous pigmentation. So those pigments coming from the environment, we call that exogenous pigments. But those derived from substances from the animal body, we call that endogenous. Example, yung mga hemoglobin-derived pigments. So they are intrinsic to the body. So they pigment specific organs. So we call that endogenous pigments. So one example is your anthracosis. Okay, anthracosis. These are characterized by carbon deposits in the lungs. So ang nangyayari, these inhaled carbon particles make the lungs appear black with carbon depositing inside alveolar macrophages and in draining lymph nodes. So this is actually common in humans who smoke, dwell in cities, or are engaged in the coal mining industry. So also animals that are dwelling in cities or are engaged in coal mining industry are also affected by this condition. Anthracosis, wherein the mode of entry is via the lungs, and then ang nangyayari, it would make the lungs appear black. Okay, because the carbon deposits would engulf by alveolar macrophages and also in lymph nodes. So that's anthracosis. And then you also have pneumoconiosis, which is a accumulation of dust particles also in the lungs. So these are or dito sa Bacolod, meron nag-aalburuto yung ano ngayon, yung Mount Canlaon. So if may mga ano tayo, may mga pasyente tayo na nagkakaroon ng severe inhalation of mga volcanic particles. So most of the time we are expecting them to have silicosis or pneumoconiosis. Okay? Then another mga unusual na ngayon because we don't usually use mga asbestos. Usually ito problem ito sa kisame kasi this is mga component siya ng mga ceiling. So this is an interstitial lung disease caused by the inhalation of asbestos fibers. So yung important lang to remember is that meron siyang high risk of malignancy, pleural malignancy. So but this is actually not very common nowadays. So, kasi pinagbabawal na natin gumamit ng mga asbestos na mga fibers in our construction materials. And also your tattoo used in marking animals, that's also an exogenous pigment. And then yellow pigments due to excessive intake of vitamin A precursor or beta-carotene and tetracyclines. So, sometimes itong mga patients natin na though for dogs and cats, they are naturally carnivores, so they don't eat a lot of carrots. But may mga patients, especially human patients, that yung chief complaint nila is nagyayalo sila. So, tinitingnan natin, wala naman silang liver problem, wala silang other na mga gallbladder problem. But they have excessive intake, especially sa mga bata, pediatric patients. Meron sila excessive intake of carrots. So, yung carrots natin, meron silang mga beta-carotene. So, nagkakaroon ng yellowing of the skin. So, do not diagnose your patients agad with jaundice. You take a careful history if meron ba silang excessive intake of beta-carotene because they would appear jaundiced sa'yo, pero it's just yellow pigments. Hindi siya true jaundice. Okay? We also have your endogenous pigments. So you have first your melanin. It's a normal product of your melanocyte. So it is the pigment that makes you tan. Okay, so increased production, but your melanin, they are pathologically increased in conditions wherein there is exposure to excessive irradiation, sunlight, and in association with tumors or melanoma, wherein it's actually a malignant condition. So melanoma lang tawag, but it's a malignant condition wherein your melanocytes are excessively producing melanin. So may mga areas of your skin that would appear heavily black. So that's an abnormal production. So abnormal pigmentation of the skin, abnormal pigmentation of the cells. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about hemoglobin-derived pigments. So obviously, this is a byproduct of your hemoglobin. So you have your hematine, hemosiderin, your bilirubin pigment, or specifically, it's your hematoidin pigment, and then your porphyrins. So hematine, so the difference between your hematine and hematine is iron negative, and then hemosiderin is iron positive. So hematine, it's iron negative, occur following the action of acids to hemoglobin during tissue fixation. It's one of the most common artifacts in tissue sections. But your pathological hematines, I want you to take note, they are seen in cases of blood parasitism, particularly malaria. Okay? So hemoglobin-derived pigments commonly seen in patients with malaria, you have your hematine pigment. And also, trauma sa tissues. Okay? Your hemosiderin naman, as what I've mentioned, it's iron positive. It's iron positive pigment chemically known as your ferritin. Your ferritin is the transport or the storage form of your iron. It's usually seen in sections of the spleen and also in the bone marrow. So your hemosiderin, you will be able to see this in cases of trauma, same with hematine, and also when there's excessive hemolysis. Okay, so hemoglobin is if there is released when there is excessive hemolysis. Bilirubin, you know that it's a byproduct of your hemoglobin degradation. So it occurs when there is excessive hemolysis. If there's a failure of the liver to conjugate your bilirubin into bile or secrete this into bile, and it has a special affinity to stain tissues rich in elastic fibers, such as the sclera. So they usually accumulate in mga tissues with more elastic fibers. So sclera, so you'll be able to see, sclera is the white part of the eye, so you'll be able to see that icteric scleral. And then the skin and also the aorta, so imparting yellow coloration. So this is now the explanation of your jaundice. And then porphyrins, your porphyrin pigment is, it's a companion condition in congenital condition, which we call congenital porphyria. So, but in domestic animals, this is the reason for I am. Are you familiar with photosensitization? So, when an animal, especially mga ruminants or domestic animals na herbivores, when they ingest toxic plants wherein your porphyrin is formed following breakdown of your chlorophyll, the porphyrins would accumulate in the skin. So, what will happen? The skin would become photosensitized. So when there is exposure to the sun, nagkakaroon ng photosensitization. So porphyrins is associated with photosensitization, especially in cattle. Okay? So may mga plants na they actually induce production of your porphyrin that would accumulate in the skin, causing photosensitization. We also have your lipid-derived pigments. So these are partially degraded lysosome-bound indigestible residues of autophagic vacuoles in cells that accumulate over time. So this is a result of your wear and tear with aging. So known by various names, you have your lipochrome, lipofuscin. So itong lipofuscin yung ma-remember ko na wear and tear. So it's a lipid-derived pigment. You also have ceroid and pigment of brown atrophy. So brown fat, so brown atrophy. Okay. What about your pathologic mineralization? So this is the prototype condition of this mineralization is your calcification. So very obvious calcification, it's the deposition of calcium and other mineral salts. So meron tayong dalawang class of calcification or mineralization. You have metastatic and you have dystrophic. So ano yung difference ng dalawa? Just remember, if you say metastatic mineralization, there is deposition of calcium in organs because there is hypercalcemia. Okay? There is persistently elevated calcium levels in the blood. So, ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng calcium deposition, nagka-calcify yung mga organs. Okay? So, this is metastatic mineralization or calcification. When you say dystrophic calcification, nagkakaroon ng calcium deposition because the organs is already diseased. So there's a problem with the control mechanism ng calcium, especially mga calcium transports. So they accumulate excessive amounts of calcium ions, nagkakaroon ng calcification. So difference, metastatic, persistently elevated. So in cases of your hyperparathyroidism, hypervitaminosis D, or chronic renal disease. So nagkakaroon ng persistent hypercalcemia. Sa dystrophic, wala. Ano lang siya, the organ itself is already damaged, so nagkakaroon ng accumulation of calcium. So let's proceed to your irreversible injury, okay? So there are two phenomena that characterize reversibility. So if there is inability to reverse mitochondrial dysfunction, and if there are profound disturbances in membrane function. So, ito yung sinabi ko, if the cell isn't able to adapt to changes, to stressors, nagkakaroon sila ng reversible injury leading to cell death. So, they would undergo either necrosis or apoptosis. So, ano yung difference ng dalawa? So, okay. So, necrosis and apoptosis, they differ in terms of cell size, the nucleus, the plasma membrane, cellular contents, the presence of inflammation, and if it's physiologic or pathologic. So when you say necrosis, so the cell is typically enlarged, okay? In apoptosis, nag-shrink siya. So there is shrinkage. Nucleus, there are nuclear changes that we will talk about later that will characterize your necrosis. You have pycnosis, karyorrhexis, and karyolysis. You add na lang din because Thompson also reiterated one nuclear change. Another, in addition to your pycnosis, karyorrhexis, and karyolysis, is complete absence of nucleus. That's also a feature of your necrosis. Okay? And then in apoptosis, na nangyayari sa nucleus is nagpa-fragment siya. Fragmentation into nucleum-sized fragments. And then, sa necrosis, the plasma membrane is disrupted, sa apoptosis is intact. Cellular contents, nagli-leak out siya in necrosis, in apoptosis, intact siya. Ito yung reason kung bakit walang inflammation yung apoptosis. Okay? That's the most defining feature of your apoptosis that would differ it to necrosis. Ang necrosis, meron siyang inflammation. Yung apoptosis, wala. Kasi nga intact yung plasma membrane, hindi nagli-leak out yung mga degradation products ng apoptosis. Nasa loob lang siya ng cell, so walang corresponding or walang adjacent na inflammation sa surrounding tissues. Okay? And then your necrosis, most of the time, it's pathologic. And your apoptosis, it's a programmed cell death. Okay? So it's most of the time physiologic. Okay? You remember and you familiarize this table, ha? Basta apoptosis, it's always intact. Intact plasma membrane, intact cellular contents, no inflammation. Okay? So ano yung definition natin ng necrosis? It's death of cells or tissues following injury. So if injury persists or increases in severity, the cell reaches the limit of its ability to adapt and is pushed into the injurious phase wherein there is a precise moment of transition from reversible to irreversible cell injury. We call that your point of no return. So that is when the cell reaches this point of no return, no amount of intervention can save the cell. So your necrosis is generally characterized by denaturation of cellular contents, denaturation of your cellular proteins, leakage of cellular contents, yung sinabi ko kanina, local inflammation, and enzymatic digestion of the injured cell. So meron tayong mga ultrastructural changes characterized by necrosis. Ultrastructural, we have nuclear and cytoplasmic changes. Ultrastructural, so margination or progressive loss of nuclear chromatin, that's a characteristic of necrosis. Focal rupture of your plasma lemma, and then development of your flocculent densities in the mitochondria. Nuclear changes, pycnosis, it's the condensation of nucleus into dark, round, homogeneous mass. So parang ghost appearance of your nucleus. So dark, round, homogeneous mass. When you say karyorrhexis, shattering or fragmentation of your nuclear material. Your karyolysis is dissolution of your nuclear material. This is through the action of your deoxyribonuclease. It leads a nuclear halo. And then complete absence talaga. Wala na talagang remnants of nucleus. That's the fourth nuclear change that you'll be able to see in your necrosis. Okay? Remember the definitions, and then the description. Pycnosis, karyorrhexis, karyolysis. Cytoplasmic changes, ito, you have your opacification of the cytoplasm due to denaturation of your proteins, and increased eosinophilia in your hematoxylin and eosin stains due to increased affinity of your denatured cytoplasm to acidic dyes. But ito, hindi naman siya lumalabas. Ang lumabas talaga sa boards is itong nuclear changes. Your necrosis. So pallor, because wala nang blood flow yung organ. So pallor of the affected organ, loss of tissue strength, so laylay, masyado yung yung organ, where the necrotic portion becomes soft and friable. And then there's the presence of a distinct zone of demarcation between necrotic and viable tissue. So sometimes when you do your biopsy, makikita mo talaga there is a clear margin ng dead tissue between your viable tissue. So we have different patterns of your necrosis. Okay, so isa-isahin natin siya. So, ito, coagulation versus caseous necrosis or caseation necrosis. Your coagulation necrosis, it's better described because yung architecture ng cell or yung architecture ng tissue is preserved. Okay? Unlike your caseous necrosis, the architecture is not preserved. So, cheesy-like appearance or cheesy-like appearance ng tissues, that's caseous necrosis. Okay? So, ano yung mga examples natin of coagulation necrosis? So, coagulation necrosis, ischemic necrosis of all organs. So, pag nagkaroon ng interruption or deprivation of blood flow into certain organs, all the organs would undergo coagulation necrosis except the brain. Okay? Yung ischemia of the brain, ang specific na necrotic pattern na ini-exhibit niya, it's not coagulation necrosis, but it's your liquefactive necrosis. Okay? Ischemic necrosis of the brain is liquefactive necrosis. Ischemic necrosis in all organs except the brain, that's your coagulation necrosis. Okay? Then your caseous necrosis naman, it's encountered most often in your tuberculous infection. So merong tuberculous foci doon, yung mga tuberculoma, when they undergo necrosis, it would appear as caseous necrosis. So cheesy-like appearance siya on the microscopic or histologic level. Liquefactive necrosis, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, when there is ischemia in the brain, so that is exhibited by liquefactive necrosis. So how will you describe that? It's characterized by digestion of the dead cells, resulting in transformation of the tissue into a liquid viscous mass. Okay? So this liquid viscous mass is a pus. Okay? So liquefactive. So meron tayong keyword dyan. Okay? Ano naman yung fat necrosis? So it refers to focal areas of fat destruction. So typically results from release of activated pancreatic lipases into substance of the pancreas. So the best example of your fat necrosis is your acute pancreatitis. Okay? So leakage of your pancreatic lipases. So nangyayari, usually yung mga secretions ng pancreas, they are secreted in the inactive or precursor form. Pag ando na sila sa lumen ng iyong small intestine, doon sila na-activate. But in cases of blockage, say for example, there is blockage due to the presence of your gallbladder stone. So you know your gallbladder, your common bile duct, and your pancreatic duct, meron silang common na exit point at the ampulla of Vater. So pag nagkaroon ng obstruction doon, so there is premature activation of these pancreatic enzymes. So they would very fast talaga, rapidly degrade the entire pancreatic parenchyma. So nagkakaroon, the characteristic necrosis to that is your fat necrosis. And then you have your fibrinoid necrosis, which is seen in immune reactions involving your blood vessels. So fibrin plus immune complexes would appear pink amorphous material, so fibrin-like, fibrinoid necrosis. And then we also have gangrenous necrosis. Yung gangrenous necrosis, it's the same with coagulation necrosis, but there is a superimposed bacterial infection. Okay? So meron tayong dry and wet gangrene. So if the bacterial infection would lead to liquefactive necrosis, that is wet gangrene. But if there is no liquefaction of the necrotic tissue, it's just dry gangrene. So gangrenous necrosis is coagulation necrosis plus a bacterial infection. So yun yung ano niyo ha, yung aalalahanin niyo. Coagulation necrosis plus superimposed bacterial infection, that's gangrenous. And then a very unique na necrosis for skeletal muscles or striated muscles is your Zenker's necrosis. So necrosis of striated muscles characterized by this appearance of striations as well as nuclei. Okay, so this would occur in your cardiac muscles and then your skeletal muscles because these are the only striated muscles. Okay. We also have mga special terms applied to necrosis. Malacia, so malacia or Malaysia. So this applies to an area of liquefactive necrosis wherein there is cross-observable softening of nervous tissue. So Malaysia, osteomalacia. Okay, so softening of your bones. So this is a form of liquefactive necrosis. You also have your slough. Okay, it refers to a piece of necrotic tissue separating from the viable tissue. So this is very common in surface epithelia. So slough, parang isipin nyo yung pinaka-layman's na definition niya, slough. Okay? So separation of the necrotic tissue from the viable tissue. And then ulcer, shallow area of necrosis with resultant excavation of the surface. So merong discontinuity of the surface epithelium kasi nagkaroon ng loss of epithelial tissue, excavation of the surface. And then you have your sequestrum, which is an isolated area of necrosis warded off from your viable tissue. Sequestrum, sequestration. Okay. Let's proceed to apoptosis. So apoptosis is your programmed cell death. So this can be physiologic in the cases of embryogenesis. So may mga a lot of embryonic changes na meron tayong mga embryonic structures that would disappear at birth. So that they disappear in the process of apoptosis. And also pathologic when there are infections. So morphologic features, ito yung nagdi-distinguish sa kanya sa necrosis. There is cell shrinkage, walang swelling, chromatin condensation, formation of cytoplasmic blebs and apoptotic bodies, and phagocytosis of apoptotic cells or cell bodies. Yung apoptosis natin, meron tayong dalawang pathways. You have your mitochondrial or intrinsic pathway, and then meron tayong death receptor initiated or your extrinsic pathway of apoptosis. So just to make this simple, kasi this is actually very complicated and very toxic. In your intrinsic or your mitochondrial pathway, I want you to remember your BCL2, BCLXL. Okay, these are your anti-apoptotic proteins. So ang nangyayari, to initiate your apoptosis, ma-activate itong anti-apoptotic. And then, pag na-activate na itong anti-apoptotic na BCL2, BCLXL, there is an activation of your pro-apoptotic proteins, which are your BAX and BAC. Ito, BAX and then your BAK. So, ang nangyayari, there is leakage of your cytochrome C, and then there is now the activation of your initiator caspases. Ano yung caspases, Doc? Caspases is the enzymes that is responsible for apoptosis. So apoptosis is technically the result of activation of your caspases. Okay? So as a mitochondrial pathway na deactivate itong anti-apoptotic na BCL2, BCLXL, na-activate yung pro-apoptotic na BAX and BAC. And then there is leakage of cytochrome C that would initiate the activation of your caspases. In your death or extrinsic death receptor naman, ang nangyayari, there is activation of your death receptors. Ano yung death receptors? Ito, your FAS or your CD95, FAS or CD95, or your TNF receptor type 1 or TNFR1. So these are your death receptors that when there is a specific ligands that would bind to it, yung ligands na to, these are actually mga pro-apoptotic ligands. So they would actually immediately would activate your initiator caspases. As a result, there is apoptosis, okay? Or programmed cell death. So, wag na natin yung toxicin. So, just remember your your anti and pro-apoptotic proteins, and then yung dalawang pathway, mitochondrial and death receptor pathway. So, we also have other mechanisms of cell death. So, there's a combination of necrosis and apoptosis. We call that necroptosis. So, programmed form of necrosis. And then pyroptosis, it's apoptosis accompanied by release of fever interleukin. That's your interleukin 1. Okay, and then ferroptosis triggered when excessive intracellular levels of iron or reactive oxygen species overwhelm the glutathione-dependent antioxidant defenses to cause unchecked membrane lipid peroxidation. Okay, so ferroptosis is characterized by high intravascular levels of your iron, okay, or reactive oxygen species. So let's talk about post-mortem changes. So we have 3 post-mortem changes. These are gross changes that you will be able, kasi lahat naman tayo nakapag-perform ng necropsy. So these are the changes that you will be able to identify. So rigor, livor, and alvor mortis. Rigor mortis is the post-mortem stiffening or rigidity of the body. So it results from a decrease in levels of ATP beyond critical levels. So ang responsible for your rigor mortis is the lack of ATP. So recall your sliding filament na mechanism. Okay, so in order for the myosin heads to detach, para mag-detach siya sa active sites on the actin filament, we need ATP. Okay, so ang nangyayari pag patay na yung organ or patay na yung animal, wala nang production of ATP. So ang nangyayari, nagsistiffen because there is contracture, hindi nagde-detach yung myosin head dun sa active sites ng actin. So, ang nangyayari, there is stiffening or nagre-rigid yung body. After that, there is pooling of blood on the dependent portion of the body. So, kung namatay yung animal on the left side, so you will see there is discoloration on the left side because of gravitational pooling of blood. We call that livor mortis. And then algor mortis, it's simply the cooling of the body as it begins to change towards the ambient temperature of the room or surroundings due to cessation in thermoregulation. So pagpatay na yung animal, wala nang hindi na active yung thermoregulatory center. So ang nangyayari, nagko-cool off yung body. That's algor mortis. Rigor is stiffening, livor is gravitational pooling, algor is cooling off the body. Okay, remember that one. We also have mga late post-mortem changes. So self-destruction or autolysis just after death, the cell membranes break down and release enzymes that start self-digestion. And then putrefaction is the decomposition of the body due to microbial action. Okay? So let's talk about mechanisms of cell injury. So ito, if this is overwhelmed of if these mechanisms are persistent, it would lead to your irreversible injury. So mitochondrial damage. So this is characterized by increases in your cytosolic calcium, reactive oxygen species, and oxygen deprivation. So mitochondria. So pag wala ng mitochondria, wala nang mag-carry out ng iyong Krebs cycle, ng electron transport chain, madideplete yung ATP supply natin. Okay? Membrane damage, so hindi lang ito plasma membrane, it would also include your mitochondrial membrane and lysosomal membranes. So pag na-degrade na yung lysosomal membranes, yung lysosome natin is the suicide valve. Meron siyang mga suicide enzymes doon, hydrolases, that would self-digest the cell. Okay? Damage to DNA through radiation or chemotherapeutic anti-cancer drugs, and then accumulation of your oxygen-derived free radicals, your oxidative stress. So these are your oxygen-derived free radicals or reactive oxygen species. And then also you have your disturbance in your calcium homeostasis, where there is increased cytosolic calcium, and endoplasmic reticulum stress, okay? The unfolded protein response. So if the cell is unable na to cope with the accumulation of misfolded proteins, so the cell activates caspases and would initiate apoptosis. So ito, so if the cell, ito yung diniscuss natin, ito, normal cell injury stimuli, nagkakaroon ng cell injury. If kaya pang ma-save, nag-undergo ng reversible injury and then nababalik to normal. But if not, nagkakaroon ng irreversible and then undergo necrosis and apoptosis. But if the cell is able to adapt, magkakaroon tayo ng mga adaptive changes or adaptations. So these are reversible changes in the size, number, phenotype, metabolic activity or functions of cells in response to changes in their environment. So basic na lang to sa inyo. What is the difference between hypertrophy and hyperplasia? Hypertrophy, lumalaki yung cell. Okay? There is increase in the size of cells. That's hypertrophy. Pag sinabi naman natin hyperplasia, increase in the number of cells. Okay? Increase in the size of cells, that's hypertrophy. Increase in the number of cells, that's hyperplasia. Atrophy naman, it's the reduction in the size of an organ or tissue after siya nag-reach ng normal size. Okay? That's atrophy. Yung masasabi mo lang siyang atrophy, nag-atrophy siya if at some point ng life ng animal is nag-reach siya sa normal na size and then lumiit siya due to stressor. So that's reduction in size of an organ or tissue. That's atrophy. Metaplasia, it's the reversible change in which one differentiated cell type is replaced by another. Okay, so from squamous epithelial tissue, naging columnar epithelial tissue siya. Or from columnar, naging squamous siya due to severe stress. Okay, so pinaka-best example nito is Barrett's metaplasia. So sa esophagus, yung distal third ng esophagus, so if you have patients na may continuous na gastroesophageal reflux. So paraging nagre-reflux yung gastric acid. So ang nangyayari yung distal lining ng esophagus, nag-change siya from a squamous epithelial na resilient sa bolus ng food, nag-change siya into columnar. This is actually premalignant. So pag hindi na control, nagkakaroon tayo ng esophageal carcinoma. Another one is anaplasia. Hindi ko na-include dito. Anaplasia is the change of a well-differentiated cell type into a less differentiated cell type. So parang differentiated na siya into squamous cell, nag-change siya into a precursor na primordial cell that has the capacity to differentiate into another cell type. That's anaplasia. Okay? Ang difference sa metaplasia, ibang type talaga siya ng cell, ibang type talaga siya ng tissue. But when you say anaplasia, it's a reversion siya. It's a conversion to a less differentiated na cell type. So we also have agenesis, aplasia, and hypoplasia. When you say agenesis, there is complete absence of an organ and primordium. So example is renal agenesis, pinanganak na walang kidney. Aplasia naman is complete absence of an organ because of primordial development failure. Okay? So andun yung mga precursor cells that would give rise to this specific type of organ. But because of failure, nagkakaroon ng aplasia. So ang nangyayari, aplastic yung organ. So absence pa din siya. The difference na sa agenesis, wala talaga yung organ precursors. Yung aplasia, andun yung organ precursors but hindi siya nag-develop. Hypoplasia, incomplete yung development. So ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng rudimentary na organ. Rudimentary and then usually less functional siya or non-functional at all. Okay? Let's talk about inflammation. So inflammation, it's part of your protective healing. Okay? Protective para gumaling yung injured na tissue, nag-undergo sila ng inflammation. So bakit tayo nagbibigay ng mga anti-inflammatories? So because there are times na na-overwhelm yung inflammatory mechanisms, then it would cause damage na to the surrounding tissues. Kaya tayo nagbibigay ng anti-inflammatories. So generally, a beneficial response, but they can be harmful. So meron tayong different causes. You have infections that might be bacterial, viral, or parasitic. That could be tissue necrosis. That could be the presence of foreign bodies or immune reactions. Okay? So remember these 5 cardinal signs of inflammation. So when you say rubor, calor, dolor, tumor, and punctuliza. So these are the Latin counterparts. Yung rubor, easily remembered kasi rubor is letter R. So automatically that's redness. Rubor, that's redness. Yung tumor naman, it's very self-explanatory. Pag sabi mo tumor, malaki siya. So there's swelling. Okay? Functuliza, hindi mo na kailangan yan, hindi mo na dapat guguluhin yung isip mo niyan. Kasi functuliza, it's loss of function. Siya lang yung naiba dyan. Siya lang yung hindi, or rubor, calor. Hindi siya ganun. Functuliza is loss of function. And then, itong dolor, it's very easy to remember. Ito yung way ko para ma-remember ko siya. Kasi yung classmate ko dati, meron siyang ex-boyfriend na ex-boyfriend niya, yung apelyado ng ex niya is Dolor. Tapos sobrang sinaktan siya ng boyfriend niya na yun. So, ina-associate ko siya na, si Dolor, binigyan niya ng hurt yung classmate ko, so pain. Dolor is pain. Okay, so ang remaining na nun, yung calor, it's warm or hot. Calor or warmth. Rubor is redness, calor is warmth, dolor is pain, tumor is swelling, punctuliza is loss of function. Okay, so general types of inflammation, your inflammation can be categorized into acute or chronic. Okay, so onset, mabilis lang yung acute, and then yung chronic inflammation, it would take days. And then they also differ in the population of cells na nag-infiltrate. So acute, it's mainly neutrophils. Your chronic is you have your monocytes, macrophages, and lymphocytes. And then tissue injury, usually mild and self-limited. And then your chronic, it's often severe and progressive. Okay? Local and systemic signs, very prominent siya sa acute, but in chronic is less. Kasi less siya kasi slow yung onset. So nangyayari yung organs, they have the time to cope up or to adapt to the inflammatory changes. Okay? Kaya yung systemic signs is lesser. Unlike sa acute na very prominent talaga. So there are 5 general steps of your inflammation and healing. So first is recognition of your injurious agent. So yung cells of the body, this is made possible by the presence of your toll-like receptors, TLRs. TOLL, toll-like receptors. So if these toll-like receptors are bound to your microbial agents or kahit anong injurious agents, they would initiate production of molecules that are involved in inflammation. And the next one is your recruitment of leukocytes. So remember your mga margination, rolling, adhesion, diapedesis, and migration of your leukocytes towards the tissue na may chemotactic stimulus. Next one is your removal of the agent. So this is made primarily possible by your leukocytes. So phagocytosis or activation of your complement system. And then regulation or control of the response. So this is made possible by the presence of your anti-inflammatory cytokines. So your lipoxin, your transforming growth factor beta, and then your interleukin-10. And then resolution or repair. So ito na yung remodeling of the inflamed tissue para maging functional siya somehow. Okay? So maging functional siya ulit or ma-restore yung normal tissue integrity. So what are the changes or the events occurring in your inflammation? So, Doc, we only have 8 minutes. Can we extend lang for like siguro mga 15 minutes? Hello? Okay, sige, let's continue. There are changes in your vascular caliber and flow. So you have your the response of the body if there is an injurious agent it would undergo initial arteriolar constriction following injury. So ang first na nangyayari, there is a local vasoconstriction. This is followed by sustained na vasodilation of your small blood vessels leading to increased blood flow. This would now explain your hyperemia. Okay? And then when there's hyperemia, ang nangyayari, there is overload ng venous drainage. So nagkakaroon ng passive congestion. When there is passive congestion, it would impair the blood flow. So there is slowing of blood flow. So this would this would actually lead to local edema or extravasation of plasma or intravascular fluids from the intravascular compartment into the interstitial tissue. So nagkakaroon ng local edema. And then your margination, so margin, nag-aano sila, yung leukocytes is, they move into the periphery of your blood vessels. So yung blood vessels mo, so central and then periphery. So dun sila because they are prepared to migrate to the site of injury. So adherence, nag-adhere sila sa endothelial cells. And then pavementing the entire endothelial cell, intravascular na surface ng endothelial cell is, it's already covered up by leukocytes, ready for migration or diapedesis. Okay? So it also, in inflammation, there is increased vascular permeability. So yung vascular permeability changes, meron siyang dalawang phase. Immediate phase that usually lasts in less than an hour, and a prolonged phase that lasts for 3 to 4 hours or longer. Okay? So itong increase in permeability, It's actually interceded by chemical mediators. So, but it's not only by direct damage to the endothelia. So, it's also mediated by chemical mediators. So, ang ultimate endpoint, because of increased vascular permeability, there is edema. So, nagkakaroon ng swelling ng affected area. Also, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, leukocyte reactions, margination, adherence, pavementing, and ultimately leading to migration or diapedesis. So question, what attracts leukocytes to migrate to the injured site? It's your chemokines, okay? Chemokines or your chemotactic cytokines. So let's proceed to your mediators of inflammation. So bakit nagkakaroon ng inflammation? Ano yung mga enzymes ano yung mga substances or molecules in the body that would aid your inflammation? These are your autocoids. So remember your autocoids, these are your local hormones or locally acting hormone-like vasoactive substances which originate from diffuse tissues. So meron tayong tatlong major classes of your autocoids. You have your biogenic amines. So from histamine and then serotonin, yung examples. You also have your polypeptides, your bradykinin, your angiotensin, and then your lipid-derived autocoids, your eicosanoids, and then your platelet activating factor. Ano yung eicosanoids? Yung eicosanoids natin yung mga prostaglandins, yung mga thromboxane, prostacyclin, leukotrienes. Okay? So itong eicosanoids, this is also very high yield. So in your physiology, I'm not sure if nag-review na kayo ng physiology, so you review your arachidonic pathway. Yung cyclooxygenase, yung mga lipooxygenase pathway that is actually very high yield kung saan nag-a-act si NSAIDs, kung anong pathway ng arachidonic anong step ng arachidonic acid pathway yung binablock ng NSAIDs. Okay? So that's why yung NSAIDs mo is meron siyang anti-inflammatory because they block the. Okay? Let's proceed to the phases of wound healing. So malapit na tayong matapos, okay? So meron tayong tatlong phases of wound healing. So you have your hemostasis and inflammation, you have proliferation, and maturation and remodeling. Okay. So this is a diagram. This is a diagram ng phases of wound healing. So in this upper portion, ito, so this is the representation of the population of cells that would infiltrate the site ng wound. Okay? So as you can see, ang pinaka-first na magpapopulate doon sa wound is your neutrophils, which is followed by your macrophages, and then your fibroblasts. Your fibroblasts, pag nagkaroon na ng presence of fibroblasts, that indicates the transition from your inflammatory phase to your proliferative phase. Okay? So, and then yung pinaka-last na population is your lymphocytes, okay? Lymphocytes. So, usually mga chronic conditions na lumalabas yung lymphocytes. So, take note of the sequence, neutrophils, macrophages, fibroblasts, and then your lymphocytes. Dito naman sa baba is, hindi naman siya very important, but this is the matrix or the restoration of the normal tissue integrity. So ano yung first na nag-accumulate yung fibronectin, followed by your collagen 3, and then you have your collagen 1, and then your wound breaking strength. Ito yung pinakalas na nag-gain ulit ng wounded na tissue. So yung wounding, pag nagkaroon ng interruption in your epithelial tissue or yung skin integrity, okay? Nagkakaroon ng exposure of your subendothelial collagen kasi nade-destroy yung mga maliliit na blood vessels, nagre-rupture sila when there is a wound. Kaya nagkakaroon ng bleeding. So exposure of your subendothelial collagen to platelets would cause platelet aggregation, degranulation, and activation of the coagulation cascade. The endpoint is hemostasis. Magsa-stop yung bleeding. Okay? Also, in addition, hindi lang exposure of your subendothelial collagen ang nagkukos ng platelet aggregation, but also the presence of your thromboxane. Okay? Ito yung, isa siyang eicosanoid. It's an eicosanoid that is produced by your cyclooxygenase pathway. Okay? So, thromboxane. So, ito yung mga cellular populations that would infiltrate the wound. First is your neutrophils or your polymorphinuclear. So they enter the wound site and peak at 24 to 48 hours. And then you have your macrophages. These are the second population of inflammatory cells. So macrophages, they are derived from your monocytes, okay? So they peak by 48 to 96 hours post-injury, and they remain present until wound healing is complete, okay? And then these are the functions of your macrophages. So they are responsible for phagocytosis. Ang nagme-mediate niyan is the presence of nitric oxide and then your reactive oxygen species. Debridement also by means of your collagenase and elastase. And then cell recruitment and activation by the presence of your growth factors. So take note, PDGF is platelet-derived growth factor. PGF beta is transforming growth factor beta. EGF is epithelial growth factor, and IGF, it's your interstitial growth factor. And then TNF alpha, it's your tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and then fibronectin. And then also, your hindi lang phagocytotic na function yung macrophage nyo, it's also for matrix synthesis, and then your angiogenesis or restoration of your blood vessels. Okay? So pag mga major blood vessels yung na-damage ng sugat, nagkakaroon ng collateral circulation. So that is the appearance of mga maliliit na blood vessels. That is to restore the blood flow. Kahit hindi pa na-restore yung major na blood supply or artery to that wounded tissue, nagkakaroon ng collateral circulation. So mga maliliit na blood vessels, they connect with each other to supply somehow the injured tissue. Kasi pag walang blood supply, hindi talaga gagaling yung sugat. So, okay? So angiogenesis is very important. So the last population of cells is your T lymphocytes. So they are less numerous and then nagpipeak sila about 1 week post-injury. So itong T lymphocytes, usually they occur in the in the middle of your proliferative phase. Okay? So by days 4 to 12, nag-accumulate na yung mga fibroblasts, which are responsible for fibrosis or the restoration of your tissue. So proliferation, after hemostasis and inflammation, nagkakaroon ng proliferation. Second phase, that wherein the tissue continuity is reestablished, and they are characterized by the presence of fibroblasts and endothelial cells. Fibroblasts to restore the tissue, the connective tissue, endothelial cells to restore the blood system, okay, or the vasculature or the blood supply of that injured tissue. So fibroblasts, they are attracted to the wound site because of the presence of your platelet-derived growth factor. So they synthesize collagen and actively carry out matrix contraction. So your endothelial cells naman, they participate in angiogenesis. Ito yung sinabi ko, under the influence of your tumor necrosis factor alpha, your transforming growth factor beta, and then your vascular endothelial growth factor, okay, or VEGF. So collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. And then your collagen plays a critical role in the successful completion of wound healing. So out of 18 types of collagen na described in the book, ang very important lang I want you to remember in wound healing is your type 1 and then your type 3. Type 1 is it's the major component of your extracellular matrix in the skin. And then your type 3, which is normally present in skin, becomes more prominent and important your collagen. It is first secreted as a protocollagen. Okay, this is your protocollagen, wherein it is a combination of your alpha 1 and alpha 2 helices. Okay, so they produce a triple helix formation, and then they would undergo modifications in the Golgi apparatus to produce your procollagen. Okay, so your 3 alpha helical chain would undergo further modifications in the Golgi apparatus to form your procollagen. And then your procollagen peptidase, so they are secreted extracellularly now, and then your procollagen peptidase would cleave this extra polypeptides in your collagen to cleave your collagen na final structure of your collagen. Okay? So, ang gusto ko lang i-reiterate dito, so yung process of formation ng protocollagen, it needs a lot of substrates. Okay? It needs oxygen, it needs iron as cofactors. Need niya din ng alpha-ketoglutarate as a co-substrate, and it needs ascorbic acid as a electron donor. So ito yung significant ng ascorbic acid. So pag may mga pasyente tayo na may mga sugat, I always give vitamin C. So hindi siya directly involved in the wound healing, but then yung vitamin C mo, it's an electron donor para sa formation ng inyong collagen. Okay, so that's why we need your vitamin C in patients na may mga active wounds. Okay, so again, protocollagen is combined to form 3 helical chains, and then would undergo specific modifications in your Golgi apparatus to produce your procollagen, and then your procollagen peptidase would cleave this procollagen to form the final form of your collagen, which is now meron na siyang tissue breaking strength. Okay, ito yung mag-accumulate dun sa wound para ma-restore yung normal integrity ng wound. But take note ha, pag nasugatan na, ito sinabi ito sa mga surgery books, pag nasugatan na yung pag nagkaroon ng sugat yung balat, okay, or yung muscle, pag nagkaroon ng injury, there is a tendency to repair. Nare-repair pa naman siya, but the original na strength ng tissue na yan, hindi siya nababalik to its original form. Lesser talaga yung tissue strength niya after injury. Okay? So maturation and remodeling, so it begins during the fibroblastic phase, and it's characterized by reorganization of previously synthesized collagen. Kasi yung collagen accumulate lang siya. Hindi siya aesthetic mag-accumulate. So ang nagre-remodel niyan, or the enzyme responsible for breaking down of excess collagen is your matrix metalloproteases, or MMP. Okay? So there is a net shift towards collagen synthesis and eventually reestablishment of your extracellular matrix. We also have what you call epithelialization. So I just want you to remember what is epithelialization. It's characterized primarily by proliferation and migration of epithelial cells adjacent to the wound. So it begins within 1 day of injury and is seen as thickening of the epidermis at the wound edge. So ito rin yung responsible sa contraction, okay? So immediately after injury, despite the absence of myofibroblast. So myofibroblast is the major cell responsible for wound contraction, and it differs from the normal fibroblast in that it possesses a cytoskeletal structure. Okay? So pag sinabi mo nag-wound follow-up kayo, nagpa-follow-up check-up kayo sa mga patients niyo na may mga sugat, makikita nyo na nagko-contract na yung sugat, or parang there is re-establishment. Yung wound edges kasi yung first na nagko-contract until such time na ma-cover up niya yung entire na balat. So wound contraction, if you see that, that's actually a good indicator of wound healing. Okay? So we also have different types of wound healing. So remember lang natin, mauulit ito sa surgery ninyo. So primary intention, secondary intention, and tertiary intention. So when you say primary intention, so this requires clean tissue, and then na-approximate siya, or parang na-oppose natin siya. So mga fresh wound na wala pa masyadong contamination, we close them we allow the wound to heal by primary intention. That is primary closure. So kino-close natin siya, and then because we are so sure that the wound is clean, okay? Yung secondary intention naman, if there is significant na loss ng tissue, hindi mo siya na-oppose. No matter kahit ano pa lang, kahit malinis yung wound sana, pero hindi mo siya ma-appose. And then kung i-appose mo naman, parang magiging masyadong masikip yung closure ninyo. So, kasi pag nag-close tayo ng sugat, dapat hindi masyadong masikip because we allow wound healing. Kasi after that, after ng sugat, we expect hemostasis and inflammation. So, anong nangyayari? Nagtatight yung sutures ninyo that would actually hinder with the healing process. So, we heal them by secondary healing. So, we leave the wound open to heal spontaneously, and then we do mga surgical debridement to remove your dead tissues. And then yung tertiary intention, it's a combination of primary and secondary. So parang we allow the tissue to heal by secondary intention, and then in such time nagkakaroon na ng specific amount of tissues dun sa gilid-gilid ng wound to approximate it. So pag pwede mo na siyang i-appose, pwede mo na siyang i-heal by primary intention. That's healing by tertiary intention. So initially managed as secondary intention, and then the wound is closed after a few days when wound is clean and the granulation tissue is abundant. Okay. Also, I want you to remember the different wound classes. So clean wound is class 1, clean contaminated is class 2, contaminated is class 3, and dirty wound is class 4. So may mga operative procedures yan ha. So yung mga hernia, yung mga thyroid surgery, mga mammary gland surgery, they are classified as class 1 or clean surgery. Yung class 2 or clean contaminated, so yung mga involvement ng biliary tract, yung involvement ng vagina, the mga vaginal manipulations, those are clean contaminated surgeries. Yung sa contaminated naman, or if may mga breaks in the sterile technique, or if there is gross na spillage of GIT, nagpa-perform kayo ng intestinal resection and anastomosis, and there is spillage of gastrointestinal contents, that is, your wound is already classified as class 3. And then class 4, if may mga abscess, debridement of soft tissue infection, or resection of infarcted bowel, yun, mga class 4 or dirty wounds yun sila. So hemodynamic changes, so I want you to review this one. So yung meron tayong mga tinatawag na circulatory changes or circulatory disturbances. Okay? So your total body fluid, it occupies around 65 to 80% of your overall body weight. And then 2/3 of this total body fluid is located intracellularly, and then 1/3 is extracellular. And then your extracellular fluid is further subdivided into two. You have your interstitial fluid or your tissue fluids, which is 75% of your ECF. And then plasma, which is your intravascular fluid, it's 25% of your extracellular fluid. So anong nangyayari kung mayroong changes sa Starling forces or pressure that would regulate the amount of fluid in these spaces? So I want you to be familiar with the 4 different types of pressure, okay? You have your hydrostatic pressure, so intravascular. Dito sa loob, this is your intravascular compartment, and this is your interstitial fluid, okay? So normally, dapat meron tayong plasma dito that would regulate meron tayong plasma or intravascular fluid that is 25% of your extracellular fluid. So they are being controlled by the interactions of your hydrostatic pressure and then your plasma osmotic pressure. And then dito sa interstitial tissue, meron din tayong interstitial hydrostatic pressure or interstitial fluid pressure or interstitial fluid osmotic pressure. So ang difference nila, pag sinabing hydrostatic pressure, gusto niyang ipalabas yung fluid from the intravascular compartment papunta sa interstitial tissue. Okay? Opposite siya ng action ng plasma osmotic pressure. Plasma osmotic or plasma colloidal or oncotic pressure. Magkaparehas lang sila ha. So I want you to remember the synonyms. Osmotic pressure, colloidal osmotic pressure, or oncotic pressure. Okay. So itong plasma osmotic pressure, it is it is made, nagmi-mediate nito are the presence of your plasma proteins, particularly your albumin. Okay? So itong proteins na present dito sa plasma, sila yung nag-hold ng fluid within the intravascular space. Pag nagkaroon ng hypoalbuminemia in the presence of liver disease or liver cirrhosis, so it would impair the production of albumin. So nangyayari, there is hypoalbuminemia or kakaunti na lang yung natirang albumin dito sa intravascular space. So ang nangyayari, itong plasma osmotic pressure na mag-hold sana sa fluid in the intravascular space, bumababa siya. So ang nangyayari, ang tumataas mo lang is your hydrostatic pressure. So your hydrostatic pressure would push the intravascular fluid to the interstitial tissue. In the interstitial fluid spaces. Okay? So, meron din tayong nag-o-oppose. If masyadong mataas yung interstitial fluid pressure, it would oppose the edema. Okay? Pero kung ito hindi rin siya very significant, so nagkakaroon talaga ng edema or tissue fluid accumulation. So meron yung mga variants ha. So if it happens in the pericardium, nagkakaroon ng pericardial effusion, sa pleura, pleural effusion, in the intraperitoneal space, nagkakaroon ng ascites. So ganun siya. Ha? So your plasma oncotic pressure or colloidal osmotic pressure is very important to control the volume of your plasma in the intravascular space. So we have these 4 mechanisms of edema. Yung sinabi ko kanina is decreased plasma colloid osmotic pressure. Yung sinabi ko kanina na hypoalbuminemia. Or if there is increased blood hydrostatic pressure. So if your patient has volume overload, so mataas masyado yung hydrostatic pressure in the blood. So it would promote edema. And then increased vascular permeability in cases of inflammation. So nagiging leaky na yung endothelial cells. So pinapalabas niya yung plasma into the tissue, into the interstitial tissue. And also, if there is lymphatic obstruction. Ano yung example nito? Example of this is your filariasis. Okay? Filariasis. So ano yung nangyayari sa filariasis? Yung filariasis is, it's actually a worm. It's a helminth that blocks the lymphatic vessels. So yung mga tissue fluids, normally kasi may lumalabas talaga na plasma sa interstitial tissue. But then, this is brought about back to the intravascular space by means of your lymphatic vessels. May mga instances na nagkakaroon ng lymphatic obstruction because of may mga foreign bodies or merong mga, ito yung sinabi ko, yung filaria, nagkakaroon sila ng obstruction doon, nag-o-obstruct sila. So, ang nangyayari, hindi nababalik yung excess na tissue fluids from the interstitial tissue back to the intravascular space. So, the resulting condition is nag-iedema yung patient. So, let's differentiate hyperemia and congestion. Hyperemia, it refers to a local increase in the volume of blood and tissues due to dilation of small blood vessels. Okay? So we have physiological hyperemia. It occurs following an increase in demand for more blood. So this happens, ang pinaka prototype example nito is yung blush. Nagba-blush ka. So pag ganun kasi is parang may surge of hormones ka doon sa area na yon. So it would cause increased production of your prostaglandins that would lead to vasodilation. Okay? So nagkakaroon ng increased vascularity sa area na yon because of vasodilation. So nangyayari, your face would appear red. So that's physiologic hyperemia. But we also have pathologic hyperemia wherein it occurs as a manifestation of a disease. Okay? Alterations ng blood flow characteristic due to some underlying pathological processes. So we have 4 patterns of hyperemia. So acute local active hyperemia. Acute, so meaning mabilis, rapid onset. Then local lang siya.
and active hyperemia. This is a condition that occurs in inflammation. Okay. We also have acute local passive hyperemia. This occurs if there's obstruction in the venous drainage. Okay. So, ang nangyayari, nag-increase yung blood, hindi niya intention na mag-increase yung blood flow niya sa area na yun, but because hindi siya nakaka-proceed sa venous tributaries niya because of venous obstruction. So, nag-a-accumulate siya doon sa mga distal na arterioles. So, there is passive hyperemia. Chronic local passive hyperemia, this occurs in chronic inflammatory lesions, okay? Chronic inflammatory lesions which progresses eventually to fibrosis and obstruction or impediment in the tissue's venous drainage, okay? So, parang the same lang siya with acute local, but this is, this is chronic, so it's gradual in onset. And then chronic general passive hyperemia, ito yung nangyayari in cases of your congestive heart failure or yung mga pulmonary hypertension. Okay? What about congestion? So congestion, it's actually a passive form of hyperemia. Okay? So it's the damming of blood in an area due to diminished venous outflow. 'Di ba saan papunta yung Saan papunta yung veins, 'di ba? Veins is valvulic. Valvulic siya sa heart. Okay? So pag magkaroon ng mga venous outflow obstruction or nagkakaroon ng hindi enough yung valves na present in the veins is not very functional to bring about the venous blood back to the heart, nagkakaroon ng congestion. So nagko-congest siya usually mga pulmonary congestion, nagko-congest siya sa mga lower extremities kasi paakyat yung movement ng blood. So nagkakaroon ng congestion. It's just a passive form of hyperemia. Okay? Unlike your hyperemia, but your definition of your hyperemia, it's your increase in blood flow. Increase in blood flow due to dilatation of your blood vessels. But when you say congestion, damming of blood in an area because of reduction or obstruction in your venous outflow. Hemorrhage. So very simple definition. It occurs when blood escapes from the vasculature. Okay? So causes, trauma, septicemia, mga viremic or toxemic conditions, and mga deficiencies in your blood coagulation factors. So remember your clotting factor, yung intrinsic and extrinsic. So merong kanta niyan, i-search nyo sa Google. So hindi ko nakakantahin. Yung clotting factor song, it's very helpful in physiology. Yung 12-11-9. 12-11-9. Basta yun yung kanta. So memorize ko siya, hindi ko kakantahin kasi nahiya ako. Okay? And also thrombocytopenia. So yung mga patients nyo na may Ehrlichia and other forms of blood parasitism, so they have the tendency to bleed because your platelets are responsible for platelet aggregation that would be responsible for hemostasis. Okay, so we have different terms used to describe hemorrhage. So nagmamatter lang siya sa size. Pag sinabing petechiae, siya yung pinakamaliit, 2 millimeters in diameter na pinpoint foci of hemorrhage. Pag sinabing ecchymosis, 3 centimeters. Take note nyo yung size. Kasi it would give you a clue kung ano yung answer dun sa question. If you see that there is a size na state dun sa question, you'll be able to see anong type of hemorrhage yung andun sa patient. So 2 mm is petechiae, ecchymosis is 3 centimeters, and when you see purpura, purpura is when petechiae, ecchymosis, or larger areas of hemorrhages are scattered on many body surfaces. So, henoxion lane purpura. So, parang siya, patches of hemorrhages. Might that be petechiae or ecchymosis? Basta marami siya na puntok-puntok on different areas of the body. Okay? We also have mga terms used to describe hemorrhage. So, enteralgia, ano yung enteralgia? It's the passage of blood in the alimentary tract. Alimentary tract or gastrointestinal tract or digestive tract, the same lang yan. Epistaxis, nosebleed. Extravasation, extensive hemorrhage within the substance of the tissue. Extravasate. So, lumalabas yung blood from, especially from major blood vessels. Extravasation. Hemarthrosis. Arthro is joint. So, bleeding in the joint. Hematemesis is vomiting of blood. Hematocyst or hematoma, it's actually a three-dimensional collection of blood. So usually pag mga failed na mga venipuncture, so lumalabas yung blood dyan and then it would be sequestered in an area forming a hematoma. Also example is ear hematoma sa mga aso. So kakakamot ng cats, laging nag-scratch yung mga aso, so nangyayari yung mga maliliit na blood vessels in the ears would rupture causing ear hematoma. Okay, so drainage yung gagawin natin is we drain the blood, and then if very excessive talaga yung bleeding, we tend to do surgical procedure wherein we open up the flap of the ears and then we cauterize those small blood vessels kung saan galing yung maliliit na bleeding. And then hemopericardium, it's hemorrhage into the pericardial sac. Hemoptysis is coughing out of blood. Okay? Coughing out of blood. So usually mga cases of tuberculosis. Hemothorax is hemorrhage in the thoracic cavity. Metrorrhagia is passage of blood through the uterus. And then paintbrush hemorrhage. So linear or straight appearance of hemorrhage. So malapit na tayong matapos. So thrombosis. Thrombosis is the formation of blood clot within the blood vessel. So sinabi dito sa notes, antemortem clot. Okay? Antemortem. So meaning buhay pa yung patient. Nagkakaroon ng thrombosis doon. So it's only suspended at one portion of the blood vessel. So that's thrombosis, formation of blood clot within blood vessels. Pag itong blood clot na to, na-detach siya sa endothelial attachment niya, that is what you call embolism. So when a solid mass is transported from one part of the body to another through the circulatory system. So that's thromboembolism. But meron tayong different types of embolism. Meron ding fat embolism, wherein mga fat molecules, or meron tayong amniotic fluid embolism. So that's also very life-threatening. Especially, ang tendency kasi, okay lang siya sa mga malalaking blood vessels na padaloy-daloy siya doon. But when it reaches your smaller blood vessels, it would cause an obstruction. So nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng ischemia sa area na yun kasi hindi nakaka-proceed yung blood supply because there is an emboli na nakastuck up doon sa maliliit na blood vessels. Okay? Ischemia, ito na yung sinabi ko, a reduction in the flow of arterial blood to an organ or tissue. So ischemia, if there's reduction, pag nagkaroon na ng necrosis due to ischemia, we call that infarction. Okay? So an area of coagulation necrosis caused by ischemia and is due to obstruction of the blood supply following thrombosis or embolism. Okay, so that ends my presentation, guys. So any question before we end our session? So sorry guys, nag-extend tayo ng 30 minutes